Prying parents of Reddit, what secret of your child did you discover that made you wish you hadn't? We adopted one of our kids, and he is biracial, while the rest of the family is white. Back when he was in 2nd grade, I found a writing assignment that the kids had to do. They essentially had to write 3 things they would wish for if they had a genie. One of the things he wrote was, "I wish I was white." That really hit me hard. I thought we had done enough to incorporate his racial/cultural background. It wasn't something we just ignored. It hurt to see that he didn't want to be who he was, and that we had something to do with that. I hated that he felt that way, and I hated that I found it. In hindsight, however, I'm glad I found it. It opened up the dialogue even more, and our son reveled that he wanted to move somewhere where he wasn't one of the only black kids. We did end up moving to a much more diverse area a few years later, and I love it here. My son is now in middle school and is pretty comfortable talking about racial identity. As much as it hurt finding the paper, I think it was beneficial to get it out in the open. Not parent, not the kid in question. Probably worse though. I've told this story on Reddit before, but no one really cared. I'll post the cliff notes anyway. Media class. Make group YouTube account. 3 of us share a YouTube account. Me 15. Her 16. Her, female, friend 16. Her younger brother 11. See where this is going? We go to her house to film. She stays logged into YouTube on her home PC. Fast forward few weeks later in class. Searching YouTube/cloud history whilst connected to projector. Multiple and repeated 11-year-old girls in white panties video and search variations almost daily. Girl assume it's me and that I've been stealing her underwear whilst at her house. Not fun. Rumors spread. Teachers got involved. I denied everything. Got suspended. Threatened with being expelled. Ended up in counseling. Got billed for underwear I didn't steal too. Ended up leaving school few months later. All because that little sheet hadn't discovered Pornhub. Not really the prying type, but grabbed my 9-year-old daughter's tablet to show her how to get a Herc mail inbox using her web browser. Her email client was misbehaving. There were like 7 open tabs of porn, and her web search history had a boys peeing search. Shocked me and the wife. She's 9. That was when we decided it was time for a bit of anatomical and reproduction info. Which, of course, fell to me. My wife was thoroughly incapable. Edit. Yes, she has her own email, and she emails me constantly while I'm gone during the week. I'm a truck driver. She also plays Skyrim and is a level 36 two-hand wielding whirlwind of a gadget. She also thinks Legolas from the low TR movies is, in her words, super hot, so please continue telling me how badly I'm failing at parenting. This one is a faked up one. Brother 1 told my mom that he has been using Brother 2's computer to download music. This is the era of LimeWire, maybe 2007, and saw that Brother 2 had literally thousands of CP stuff on his computer. My brothers were in their early 20s. My mom checked Brother 2's computer and confirms that her child is downloading CP. What does she do? Nothing. She even bought Brother 2 another laptop when his became unusable due to the amount of viruses and malware. 2 years ago, the feds raided my mother's house. Plot twist, they were there for Brother 1. He started to download CP. She now has the honor of having both of her sons in prison and as such offenders. Of course she makes it all about herself. It's a shame. Brother 1 was the one who was supposed to make it. Used to torrent porn because that was all I knew to do. One day I open my torrent client and see it already downloading several bestiality vids. I assume it's just the client being spammy and gross, so I delete the files and proceed on to my vanilla fake tittied multi-gig downloads. The next day my dad sits me down and says I should watch out for the upstairs computer because it has been acting up or something. Says he is aware it has downloaded some gross stuff, but he immediately says he knows it wasn't me. His confidence that it wasn't me surprises me, and that's when I realize it was his. I guess he saw that somebody deleted the files and panicked thinking that I was judging him, so he had to come up with a story about how the computer does that stuff on its own, so I would know it wasn't him. If he hadn't said anything, that's what I would have assumed. Edit. I said torrent. because my memory of back then isn't pristine. But thinking back, I think I was using Kazaa or LimeWire, probably LimeWire. At the time 15-year-old me would have seen those applications as a magic box that can produce one 20-minute porn video at the astonishing speed of 7.5 hours. Play the incomplete video files while they're downloading to make sure they're what you want them to be, and just hope nobody notices it running on the computer and opens the client while the download is underway. The internet felt like the Wild West in those days. Not even really prying, but came home from work early one day and heard the shower running in the bathroom my 17-year-old son uses. Then heard some decidedly loud sounds of enjoyment from a female. Figuring none of wanted to deal with the embarrassment of an interruption, I retreated to the living room. About 15 minutes later my son and his girlfriend come downstairs and are quite surprised to see me already home. Figuring this would be a good time to twist the knife a little, I said, "So, what were you guys up to in the bathroom? Together?" My son stammered out, "Well, we had been in the pool and wanted to wash off the chlorine, and we were in a hurry, so we went in together, but we kept our bathing suits on." Then his girlfriend looked at him like he was the world's biggest idiot and said, "That's what you're going to go with?" He looked at her and said, "Yep, that's what happened." She looked at me and said, "Okay, we are going with his story." I told them it sounded reasonable. Not my kid, but a younger cousin, 16. I was asked by his computer illiterate parents to fix his laptop. As it turns out his browser was full of younger boy/older guy porn. I even found a dating profile where he was looking for much older men. His entire half of the family is very redneck and homophobic, so I cleared his history. When I gave him his computer back, I showed him how to use private browsing. I then apologized for what I was about to say, but felt obligated then explained to be careful looking for anyone so much older as it wasn't legal for a couple years yet, and due to this, he may be finding some real creepers. I then spent the next 4 years correcting his family and calling them out over their homophobic comments. Played the long game with changing their opinions. My cousin just married his boyfriend and his entire family except for one uncle showed. First time I teared up at a wedding. Edit. Thanks for the gold and the kind words. I never would have thought that something so simple to me would mean so much to so many. As a guy with gay friends, I guess I'm not overly exposed to the trials so many have to go through just to be themselves. Internet hugs for all. My mom really liked to really go through my stuff. Whenever I'd be out of the house, school trip, sleepover, she'd feel inspired to clean my room and find something to be pissed at me about. But there's a very specific story to tell here. When I was 17, I pierced my own dick. Now, I did a lot of research. I purchased an autoclave piercing needle, appropriate internally threaded jewelry, and Pennington slotted forceps. I did all the research, pierced it with no problem in our bathroom, and went about my life. It wasn't the smartest thing, but everything worked out. Now, I also knew enough that you can't just dispose of a piercing needle. So, I wrapped it in a paper towel and then duct taped it all together. That was there'd be no accidental pokes. I shoved that into a container, tucked in my closet, to dispose of later. Anyway, I was out on some school trip for a few days, and you can probably guess what happened. When I got home, my mom wouldn't look at me or talk to me. I had no idea what she was mad at me for, although I had an educated guess, so I just left it alone. I was laying on my bed in my room later when my mom walked in and just handed the phone to me. No explanation given. I put it up to my ear. "Hello. Hi. This is so and so from Drive so and so's office of urology. Your mother tells me that you pierced your own penis." Yeah? I have no idea how she knew what exactly I pierced. I guess process of elimination, but she forced me to make an appointment. Long story short, the doctor was impressed with the piercing. Apparently the only piercings he sees aren't doing too well, and told me and my mom so. It was really vindicating for me, but she was so pissed. She told me to take it out. I told her I did but didn't. She couldn't force me to show her. So we just went on with our lives. And then I moved across the country for college the next year. When I was in high school, I had an unusual set of circumstances fall into my lap. Middle class, white, in a sort of midway between suburban and rural town. I had been dating the same guy since I was 12 or 13. He had been kicked out of his house, and being the loyal and crafty 15-year-old partner, I built a false wall under my loft-style bed, a cavity hidden behind my little mini lover seat where he could sleep. He was somewhat older than me, and not in school anymore, so after the first few weeks some modifications had been made to the setup. We moved my little 11-inch bubble TV next to the couch, opened a small slit in the false wall, and ran controllers through, so he could play video games without the possibility of getting caught. I also got a shoe organizer, and hung it down from the bed into his little nook, and filled it with snacks. He bought the same laptop as me, so I could switch them on the charger and no one would be the wiser. We managed to get by like this for a couple months, and then I faked up by borrowing my mom's earrings and forgetting to return them. She came into my room one evening when thankfully both my boyfriend and I were not home, looking for her earrings. I didn't know that my boyfriend had stashed his weed in my jewelry box, and so as she is digging through my things she stumbles upon a cigarette box with a dime inside. This prompts her tearing a part of my room, uncovering various other paraphernalia, such as condoms, lube, my dildo, a ritual knife, and eventually, the shoe organizer full of snacks. She left all of it in a pile on top of my dresser with a note on the cigarette box that said something to the effect of "You are making bad choices, and I hope you course correct." I'm sure I would have gotten much worse than a sticky note if my parents had pieced together that I had someone living in their house without their knowledge, so I guess this is a reversal. I'm a kid that is seriously glad my parents didn't discover my secret. My sister and her son lived with me and my parents. When he was younger, I would babysit while my sister was in college. When my nephew was 6 he started hanging out behind the couch every day. He would go back there and just hang out. I figured, hey, whatever, it's probably like a fort to him. Well, one afternoon he is just laughing his ass off having a great old time behind the couch. I lean over so I can see what's up and ask if he wants a sandwich or something, and all around the baseboard are the largest collection of dead bugs I have ever seen, all laid out, some with little flowers or rocks at their heads, like little tombstones. It was like a bug graveyard. My nephew looks at me and starts laughing. I ask him what's funny. He points at the bugs and says, "Look, Auntie Tangerel, they are all dead." I say, "Yes, they sure are." He replies, "They always ran away when I would catch them, but things don't move anymore when they are dead, so they stay with me." I kinda looked at him weird, then just asked if he wanted a sandwich. I was very unsure about what to do about this, so I said nothing and let him play with his bug graveyard. He seemed to like it. I gave him a little box to put his bugs away in after he was done playing, because my mom would have lost her mind if she found a bunch of dead bugs, and I'm not sure how my sister would react. He is a very normal 15-year-old now and is really into biology and geology, and going into biology in university. I guess the bugs were just his early understandings and interest in how biology works. But man, until he announced he was into biology in high school, I was always on the lookout to see if he was becoming a serial killer or something. Apparently though, my sister knew about the dead bugs and had wondered where he got the box from, but he didn't tell her it was me because he was worried I would get in trouble. She told him not to play with his bugs if grandma was home, and my mom knew about the bugs too and just told him to make sure he washed his hands after, but didn't tell us because she thought we would freak out. Turns out we all knew about the dead bugs and kept it from each other, thinking we were protecting the kid from having his hobby taken away. He never clued us into the fact that everyone knew about the bugs. I'm retired. My daughter is 22, just started grad school, was valedictorian in high school, couldn't be more proud. She was home for a few weeks last summer. She was in the shower. I couldn't find my phone and I needed to get a hold of my wife who was out shopping. We were going to meet her for lunch. Grabbed my daughter's phone. As luck would have it, she still used the same code from when she was in high school. When we got her first phone, when she was 16, we required that we knew her code to unlock it. Unlocked her phone and the first thing to appear on the phone was a text message where she had sent a picture to someone. The picture was a selfie of her and 3 black men in bed. There was nothing sexual in the picture, but they were all naked and smiling for the camera. I didn't read the text message, but I saw enough to know that it said something to the effect of "had a great time, can't wait to see you guys again." I closed her phone and said nothing. Had a knot in my stomach all through lunch. Have never told anyone about it until now. Not even her mother. She is an adult and is free to make her own choices. And God knows, I sure did some crazy shit when I was her age. But I really wish I had never seen that. My entire family was helping my auntie and her son move house. Her son, my cousin, was 14 and had his first girlfriend, who was also there helping, load furniture and boxes. Each room was packed and loaded onto a truck by midday except for my cousin's, as he had insisted he do his own room. His room hadn't been packed at all. The only distinct difference was 3 trash bags, poorly tied in the middle of the room. My auntie, furious with his progress, refuses his pleas to let him do it alone and grabs a bag to take to the trash, and in front of everybody, my mom, grandparents, uncles, cousins, sisters etc., she accidentally drops the bag, and it unties, spilling out used condoms all over the hallway floor. We are talking heaps of them, a full trash bag full. Keep in mind there were 2 more full bags as well. His girlfriend went home with tears of pure shame pouring out her eyes, and he sort of stood there in a panic, not knowing whether to run away in embarrassment or pick up his jizz-filled rubbers that were sprawled out in front of our entire family. It was a day to remember. Okay, I'm gonna do the classic not my kid thing, but yeah, not my kid, but my kid's sister. Okay, she's 3 years younger than me, but she's the youngest, and I always call her my kid/baby sister. I went into her room to try to steal one of her many phone charger wires. She'd left her bag on her bed, and it was open. The second I saw it, my heart dropped. A pregnancy test box. She'd just turned 17. I searched for the test, but it wasn't there. I truly wished I'd never found it for a moment or two, but then I realized I needed to support my sister. Eventually she came in from work and I explained what had happened. She immediately just turned and started walking up the stairs, saying nothing. I followed her and reassured her that I wasn't angry and wasn't going to tell our mother. I just needed to know so that I could support her through this. She then burst into tears and told me that the test had been positive, but she miscarried a month ago. Honestly, I was heartbroken, both for the loss of the baby, but also because she hadn't felt she could tell us. I'm glad that her then boyfriend's family was in the know, and his mother was apparently very supportive and had taken her and her boyfriend to the hospital and taken good care of her. But I wish she had let that be me. I wish she had felt she could tell me. I supported her through it the best I could, and we had lots of cuddles and cried together a lot. She still didn't want me to tell our mom or other sister, and I didn't. A few years later she fell pregnant again, and I like to think that I did right by her after the miscarriage, because I was the first person she told. Unfortunately that pregnancy also ended in loss. Fast forward a few more years and I now have the most beautiful nephew and niece I could have ever imagined. They have no idea what they mean to me. Wait, one more. When I went off to college, I started getting rid of the boxes of my sex toys because I was paranoid of throwing them in the trash on the off chance dad would find them. Dunno why. Sometimes he loses things in the trash. So on the last night before I left, in the middle of the night, I threw the boxes in a Walmart bag, tied it, and threw it in our trash container outside. Day before trash day. I thought I was clever. Wrong. When I came home one break I brought my dildo home and forgot it. When I went back, I called mom for something a few months later for something completely unrelated, and then mom was like, "Oh, by the way, I was looking through your room for pens. I have a ton of pens, and I found your sex toy." She told me this while I was on the school shuttle, so I'm trying to keep a straight face while on the inside my stomach kind of dropped. So I replied with a "How?" And she's like, "I really wish you had come to me about this instead of going behind my back and getting this." Some other conversation, and then she makes a comment about how she's worried about the black one because it looks kind of big and something don't want to be loose for your husband when you share your first time. I was not a virgin by this conversation. I told her that's not how vaginas work, and I'm sure mine will be fine. After she hangs up I start to second guess myself and ask my friend with benefit on a scale of 1 to 10 how does my vagina feel? What the fuck are you talking about? Like, how does it feel? Is it tight? Does it feel fine? It feels like a bussy. Thanks mom. I came home from work one day to a horrendous smell. Following my nose to the kids' bathroom, I saw my daughter, then maybe 9, with a Barbie doll. Barbie was naked, and her hair had been chopped off. My daughter was holding Barbie by her little neck over the sink, and had a lighter at Barbie's foot. Talk, my daughter screamed, as Barbie's foot melted into the sink. I told you to talk. My first thought was that my daughter should not have had access to a lighter, so I asked her where she got it. Oh, it was with daddy's cigarettes, she told me, sweet as could be. What are you doing with Barbie? I asked her, trying to keep my voice calm. My little daughter's eyes hardened, and she nearly snarled she won't give up enemy secrets, so I have to torture her. This was out of character for my daughter, and we were not a household that condoned torture under any circumstances, so that really took me by surprise. Okay, honey, can you maybe find a way to torture Barbie that won't release toxic fumes? My daughter thought about it for a moment. Sure, she cheerfully told me. And honey, please give me the lighter. She handed it right over. To this day, I don't know what secrets a plastic doll might have held, or what methods were next employed, although I did find a plastic arm on the floor some time later. My daughter did not grow up to be a serial killer or to work for an intelligence agency, but rather for non-profit arts organizations. She opposes torture and thinks that all people, including prisoners, should be treated with dignity. She is very kind to people and animals. I have never witnessed any cruelty, except for that one incident, which is still a bit alarming to remember. Not exactly following the question from Op, but my mother learned a valuable lesson after what had happened with us. Being 18 years old at the time, I had a collection of uniquely sized and shaped dildos, majority coming from a site called Bad Dragon, still do plus much more now. This particular night I was super horny and had a few hours to spare, so in my room spending some quality time with 6 varying dildos and wearing some lingerie, just having a great time. Parents are downstairs watching a movie. Apparently the movie had just finished, and my mother decides to go check up on me to see what I'm doing. She doesn't knock. Here I'm on the bed, wearing a schoolgirl outfit, horse-shaped dildo all the way down my throat, a very girth white toy balls deep in my ass, cum stins all across my face and schoolgirl shirt and a few dildos laying on me. I'm frozen in place. And what does she do? She comes in and just starts talking to me like everything is normal. She glances at some of the toys laying on me. Wow, how can you fit this inside you? So these are the toys you have. Good lord, look at the size of that. So this is what you keep ordering online. Well, I will let you keep doing whatever is going on here. She walks out and closes the door. Welp, my mood is ruined now. Next morning we stare at each other awkwardly and just the look in her eyes suggests she shouldn't have come to bother me. TLDR, I had a long fax session with lots of toys and gears. Mother comes barging in and just starts having a convo, regretting it soon after. My stepmother thought she found something of mine. Back in junior high, in the days of shared household computers and AOL, I was in my bedroom doing homework when my stepmother screamed up to me, "Pink's one nipe, get down here right now." Me, what the fuck? I didn't do anything. I go 3/4 down the stairs and ask, "What?" Huh, don't give me attitude. You know what you were looking at on the computer. You left it open. Me, oh no, I definitely didn't. Huh, you mean to tell me you weren't looking up this disgusting crap? Farm sech. Ha ha ha. Nope. Farm secretary. With a judgmental look, I glance over at my dad, who is sheepishly silent in the breakfast nook. Huh, oh, Steven, it was you? Him, I, oh well. TLDR, mom spies her kids holding hands walking home from school, makes a big deal about it. Older boy gets embarrassed and won't hold sister's hand anymore. Sweet childhood moment ruined. From my sister, her children, my niece and nephew, are ages 8 and 11 respectively. She's always asked my nephew to hold his sister's hand in parking lots, crossing the road, and coming home from school. My niece tends to wander a lot and doesn't always pay attention, so someone usually holds her hand whenever there are cars around. As my nephew has gotten older, he has found his little sister annoying. He stays in his room with his computers and games and tablets, and the two of them fight a lot. And he now refuses to hold little niece's hand when asked. He says she's old enough to look after herself, and he's too old to hold someone's hand. One day while my sister was coming home, she saw the school bus coming to drop the kids off. She got curious as to how they came home, walking together, separately, fighting, walk with other friends. So she spied. The kids came off the bus, and just as natural as can be, little nephew grabbed little niece's hand and they walked home hand in hand. My sister was so excited about how sweet it was that she didn't keep her mouth shut about it. She told everyone, and the next time little nephew refused to hold his sister's hand while they were out, his mother brought up that she had seen them at the bus stop. Little nephew got embarrassed about the bus hand holding and refused to do it again. A few weeks ago I was out with the family and I grabbed my niece's hand in a parking lot. She quietly and sadly said, "Little nephew doesn't hold my hand anymore. It's done now." My niece doesn't mention it anymore, and neither does my nephew. My sister is really sad about it because she potentially ruined a sweet childhood memory for both of them. Sigh. Edit. Tried to fix italics that showed up in formatting. Okay, well, my 10-year-old son was caught creating a porn magazine with a girlfriend in the same class as him. Like crude hand-drawn pictures of stuff, I guess. I never got to see it. Anyway, the teacher found it and phoned me on my mobile whilst I was at work. She was a very well-spoken, well-to-do sounding middle-aged lady, and the conversation went thus. "Hello, is that Mr. Smith?" "Not my real name." "Hi, yes, how can I help?" "Well, I have had to speak to your son about an incident that occurred at school today." "Okay." "He was caught making a book in class today with rather explicit drawings of a sexual nature." Okay. "We are rather concerned, Mr. Smith. We asked him about the content of the subject he'd been drawing about." "Right. Well, Mr. Smith, I asked him what the people were doing in the pictures, and he said anal." It was all I could do to not start laughing whilst she continued telling me how serious this was. Haha. "This happened a couple of years ago. I can't wait for him to grow up and get married so I can get roaring drunk and tell all his friends about it at his wedding." I built my nephew a PC for Christmas a few years back. He was 11 at the time, so I knew what to expect moving forward, but he had an intense interest in how computers worked, so I wanted to get a PC in his hands to foster the interest. I routinely update the computer, and I'm just generally available for 24/7 tech support for the kid. For a while I'd see the occasional boobas or naked girls searches, and let them slide. They were far and few between and super mild. But then there was a period of time, almost a year, that I was too busy / self-absorbed to check in on the PC. He's 13 now, and lo and behold, puberty has set in. What was worse than the search history was that he was stupid enough to make accounts for each and every site. Each point and every point site. His Gmail was full of email verifications, and Chrome had saved all the autofill information. Off the top of my head it ranged from Live Jasmine to insert random hentai site here, but somehow he missed all the classics, Pornhub, RedTube, etc. Except one entry stood out a lot to me. I'll chalk it up to curiosity, and probably a side effect of the hentai, which included YIF. No judgment, folks. He's 13, so the hentai / YIF wasn't too surprising. It was the one subsequent the YIF that stood out. I mulled over how to handle it, and just went ahead and removed all the autofill data, logins, passwords, etc. Deleted the accounts, unsubscribed from the member emails. People, what an idiot. Deleting history / cookies, blah blah blah. This was about 2 months ago. I subtly showed him incognito mode and advised against making accounts for any private sites. I haven't approached the subject directly because I remember the anxiety of being caught, especially with some of the shit he was looking at, but I'll be doing another update shortly and see if there are any repeats. If I find some, then I'll sit him down and tell him to stop being a faking idiot and to use Pornhub. Found out one of my children was sexually molesting the others. Spouse and I took action immediately and called CPS, which triggered police investigation of everyone and arrest and removal of offender, but also allowed us to get therapy started for offender and victims because any therapist would have to report it to CPS. When court proceedings started, this proactive approach got responses from prosecutor and judge of "you guys are already doing everything that we would have required you to do, and months sooner. In addition to looking out for victims, your child is still at risk for conviction of a felony and lifetime sex offender registration, but successful completion of therapy can avoid that. Therapy in lieu of conviction for minors is a common thing to my understanding. This has not finished yet, but progress is being made by everyone, and there is a good prognosis since we are talking about minors. Since I'm a parent of a sex abuser, I'm having a lot more patience and understanding of sex abusers, even that Stanford rapist guy. Although I do not know the details of that story, just the ramifications of having your life shattered by an accusation or conviction. Incarceration was the easiest part of this for our child. Edit. To explain the wish I hadn't part of the question. I wish my kid hadn't molested the other kids. But I'm not regretting discovering it once it happened, because it could have got way worse, and they all needed help, and were afraid to fess up to get it. Probably too late to the party, but when I was a kid we had an old Polaroid camera that we never used anymore. So I decided it was time to start my porn/modeling career. Mind you, I was a pudgy 13Y/0 boy with a small dick. But I digress. Anyway, I decided to start mild and take a few clothed pics in the mirror, and liking how they came out, I then took off my pants and underwear, leaving on my favorite slipknot shirt that is very distinctive, and took a couple pics while soft, then a couple more hard. Well, after fapping to the thought of women looking at me, I was done with my pics. Being a stupid 13Y/0, I decided I can throw these away, because obviously my parents would go through the trash and find them. What did I do with them? I went to the garage and threw them behind my dad's tool bench. Not 2 days later I got sat down by my father very seriously. Then he brought out the Polaroids, and him being the saint he was, actually asked if they were me, knowing full well they were due to the distinctive shirt I was wearing. My face was so hot with embarrassment that all I could do was look down and doggedly deny that they were mine. He didn't press the issue, I'm assuming, because he was just as embarrassed as me, and dropped it after a few minutes. Gave me a short lecture on pics like that, and I never heard about it again. After all that, I was confused for a while on why or how he even found them. I finally realized the answer to that question when I was 27. My father and I decided to smoke some weed together for the first time. Where did he go to get his stash? Behind his faking tool bench. God damn it. I wouldn't say I was prying, but we caught my teenage son sneaking a game system into his room when grounded and playing video games when he should have been sleeping. He got caught because he kept oversleeping in the morning, and then I had some strange bank activity where he apparently used my card info to buy $30 worth of $1 box money games. The info was on the system because I had used it to get him Sparksly for Christmas. The charges were done around 2 AM. We threatened to search his whole room for contraband, but told him to confess of anything else we might find in his room he shouldn't have before we go in there. He immediately admitted that he had found some girls' clothing stashed in the woods by the house. He apparently brought them back home with him and was masturbating and ejaculating onto the clothing, then hiding them in his closet in an old book bag of his. He tried to tell me he was peeing on the clothes, but we got the truth out of him shortly afterwards. He had also been stealing our condoms and jacking off into those as well, before hiding them in the bag with the girls' clothing instead of throwing them away. We made him throw it all out, and I'll let the man of the house handle the secretary talk. Once, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, I went through all of my mother's magazines and cut off all images of the guy she referred to as sexy. These were photos of guys being shirtless or in underwear. I did it both out of anger that my mother would be admiring guys on magazines, and also because I myself thought they were actually really sexy. Mind you, I was but a boy. I was planning on throwing them away, but I couldn't help but admire them myself. So I placed them inside my underwear drawer so that I can admire them later whenever I felt like it. Several days later, I hear my mom yelling my name from inside my room. I had no idea as to what fueled such anger in her voice, but when I walked into my bedroom there she was holding all the cutouts of the semi-naked guys. She asked me what this was all about. I told her I was jealous her looking at them, so I hid them from her. I believe this was her first suspicion about me possibly being gay. Second one was, when I was in high school. Our family was finally able to afford a desktop computer. One day, I was alone in our house using the computer. I have always been curious as to what another guy looked like when naked. I had never seen a naked guy in my life. I had no idea what a regular penis looked like, and I had no idea what people considered a hot naked guy to look like. I had a good idea about good looks, but I had no idea what the naked standard was. So I decided to be efficient in my search and googled hot naked guy masturbating. One video came up, and it was the shittiest quality ever. I decided to close it, because I felt sick to my stomach. I decided to then distract myself by looking up my name and last name on Google to see what kind of people pop up. Shortly after I got off the computer and went to my room to watch TV. On the night of that very same day, my mother yells out my name. Once again, I had no idea as to what fueled the anger in her voice, and when I entered the living room there she was on the desktop computer and she called me over. She clicked on browser history. I had no clue that sheet existed, and asked me why there is a search for hot naked guy masturbating followed by my name and last name. I was so shocked. I was so scared to say anything. So I blamed a virus on the computer and told her that when I tried downloading something from LimeWire app to download music, a weird window popped up and some porn started playing and it only turned off after I inputted my name. I told her I was super shocked and scared about the entire experience. I have always been pretty good at lying. Later that night, I overheard my mom asking my oldest sister if it was possible that I was gay. My sister told my mom that she has thought about it before, but they both dismissed it. I personally never force myself to define my sexuality or label it. I had always ignored it and set it aside as a quality that I disliked about myself. I never saw myself as a sexual being anyways. Now that I've grown up and put more thought into it, I can confidently say that I do not care about one sex. I'm attracted to both, so I guess that makes me bisexual. My mother does not know about this yet. She is a super orthodox Christian who believes homosexuality of any sort is a devil's work and subject to God's wrath. I'm sure though that after all the prying she's done since I was a little kid, she's got some doubts and I know she hates the idea of me being the way I am. Back when my sister and I still lived at home, my mum had a habit of going trough things /phones /diaries /anything she could get her hands on then passing it off as the Holy Spirit told me to. Anyway, two particular occasions stuck out. My elder sister was home from uni and had left her bags in the living room. Of course, the Holy Spirit told my mum to rifle through and found a police report my sister had filed against a sexual assault. Mum made her drop out and move into my tiny bedroom. Second story involves me. Ed left my phone next to her home office where again the Holy Spirit beckoned her to look through it. Amongst other things, she found out that I was a regular pothead and also was having sex with my then high school boyfriend. She cracked the ultimate cheat and ended up writing me a 5-page letter condemning my actions and praying for my soul and also visiting my workplace where my boyfriend and I worked, crying and begging our boss to put us on separate shifts because me having sex, I was 17, was breaking our family. She was batshit lol. My mother-in-law and her husband pretty notoriously snoop through all three of her sons' houses and vehicles. We are very strict about door locking here. Well, my husband and I were temporarily living with his brother while he was going through a divorce and Mill comes over, never says a word to me, and begins digging through all of the cabinets in the house. I'm standing in the living room folding laundry and wondering what the hell she's doing this time. She comes over to the coffee table, tears streaming, and sets a canister on the coffee table in front of me. I need you to tell me what this is. That is a container of basil. Don't lie to me. I know you all do drugs. What is in this container? Open the lid. Sniff. It's a container of basil. There's some in the soup on the stove too. About this time, Her husband comes busting though the front door, furious, and holding a handful of stuff I recognize from my truck, which I apparently did not lock when I get back from feeding my animals that morning. He said sit on the coffee table. Mill gasps and runs off sobbing. About 5 syringes and a vial. A vial of cattle wormers. With a picture of a cow on the bottle. And the words, injectable wormer, on the label. That he got out of a farm truck, which also contained a bag of sweet feed and a bale of hay, as well as some questionable hoof trimmers and a bag full of wool. I just looked at him, dumbfounded. What the hell is all of this? Ivermectin. So it is drugs. I knew it. Yep, and if you tried any, you won't have intestinal parasites. If you didn't try any, it might explain why you're acting like you are, and might I suggest taking a dose to get rid of your intestinal parasites? Also don't actually try any, that shit burns like hell if you accidentally stick yourself with it. It took me hours to convince them that we weren't running some sort of drug house. They called my husband and work and his answer was, get out of my damn truck, stop digging through my sheet, and leave my wife alone. So backstory, I moved out of my parents' house, we didn't get along and there was some bad shit going on me, and into my boyfriend's house. They went into my Facebook and read our conversation. Now we are 18 and 20, and we both have extremely high sex drives. Not only that, but we are both really kinky. I love being degraded by him, and being called his slut/hoe/beach and all that. I'll call him daddy or master, and we even set up a Tinder account to see if we could find someone interested in a threesome. It was kinda successful. So my parents have seen a lot. Not only did they see all that sex stuff, they saw videos of me sucking his dick in my lassie underwear, another guy's hard on, me in various bondage, etc. I've been trying to keep a recent run-in with the cops a secret from my parents. Long story short, got busted for some weed while driving. Cops admitted they only followed me because I was going the speed limit late at night. So my parents know I've been arrested. They also know about the drugs in general, and a lot of shit I never told them. They have 500 pages of our convo printed out. I haven't talked to them since I found this out on the 1st. A man brought in a laptop to repair with his son. It was fairly simple malware, but it had soft locked the machine and they didn't bother turning it off all the way. Power button hibernates, folks. In plain view of everyone was not only a knife full of porn, but messages to women offering different sexual favors. The discomfort of everyone involved was obvious. Even the father was speechless in a what the fuck is wrong with you way. The rest aren't related, but I thought I'd share. We asked one girl her password so we could work on the machine and she wrote it down. Something to the effect of licking big dicks 52. I once had a WinXP desktop machine plugged into a monitor which displays to the whole store. I didn't notice at the time, but the profile icons were Benizes. Although I successfully clicked the clean profile once, the second time I clicked the wrong one. This then loaded a wallpaper of the same man standing in front of me, sucking a dick. I stay calm during the happenings. My only reaction is sympathy for having their personal lives spread to the public. I don't remember seeing these people again. It's okay. Really. My mom found my Born magazine's 1979-ish. She had a friend who owned a bookstore. She'd come to town every month to sell used books at a huge flea market. Eventually, she just stored all of her crap in our garage instead of dragging it back to her store out of state. Bored one day, I went looking for a book to read and found a box of magazines. The most glorious, European-born ever made. Playboy, even Penthouse was nothing compared to this awesome open beaver insertions fuckfest that lay before me. Short of having a hooker with a heart of gold living next door giving lessons, this was the best education a kid could get in the 70s. I took a few for educational purposes, and when I had learned all I could from those mags, I swiped a few more. One day, a biblical flood came and flooded my basement bedroom while I was at band camp. Yes, band camp. Well, everything had to come out down to the carpeting, and that's when my parents found about 800 incredibly explicit, savage, unrepentant porno mags in my room. They were all stacked on a table in the den. When I got home, I had to wrap, tie, and rebox all of them, and my mom's friend lost her stashing privileges at our house. I think I'm still grounded. This was over a decade ago. I don't horse around with illegal substances at all anymore. My mom discovered my psychedelic mushroom growing lab in my basement bathroom. She's a pilot, and her excuse for snooping was that she was looking for her flight log that she was certain she left at my place. She'd never even been in my basement bathroom before. She destroyed my entire grow opus. For those of you familiar, I was successfully cultivating accusations indoors. For the layman, these are among the most potent mushrooms in the world and virtually impossible to grow outside of natural conditions. Over 50 pounds of colonized substrate, and probably 10 pounds worth of fruit bodies gone. My clean/stabilized growing environment contaminated. Years worth of logs, notes, and technique tweaks erased. Keep in mind, I was an adult in my mid-20s and this was my house that I owned. I got home from work and my mom and dad are waiting for me at my kitchen table. I immediately knew what was up, although I didn't know they faking destroyed everything. Lots of hurt feelings all around that day, on my end for having my private space so thoroughly violated, and on their end, because I was getting up to some janky shit. I've known since I was a kid that my mom was a snoop, and that's why I moved out of her house less than a week after I graduated high school, but she crossed the goddamn line by doing that shit in my house. I haven't trusted her with keys to anything since, and will not allow her to be unattended in my living space, on my computer, or in my car. Some months later my dad asked me to hook him up with some shrooms. He's an old hippie biker, so it wasn't unusual for him to hit me up for drugs on occasion prior to me going totally straight. I busted him out over what happened that day. He explained that he only went along with it out of concern for my safety. I was on probation at the time, that he wasn't around. When my mom was snooping, she called him after she found it, and that he was actually very impressed with my mycological expertise. He saved all of my notes and logs, and had been studying them since. He was blown away by the amount of work I'd put into the construction, environmental control, chemistry, and cultivation/selective propagation. It was the most scientific thing he'd ever seen. Of course I scored my dad some shrooms, but that was when I realized I wanted to be done with that business. Horsing around with drugs is a major component of what caused a significant rift in my family, and I can imagine numerous scenarios where that chasm would be a million times deeper and wider. Best not to risk it. Not a parent, but I was in with the tech crowd in high school and was recruited to help with the Compact IPAC pilot educational program. Sweet deal. Support a program, get a free iPack with accessories, go to conferences, appreciation dinners, meet execs, and a get out of classes anytime pass. Everything on the device shared memory, the OS, all apps, all user data, and the memory the apps used to run all came out of the same pool. Among other things, that meant that, if you had too much user data, your apps had no memory and couldn't run. And, indeed, this was a commonly encountered problem among students sharing zip files for school. Solution: work with the student, prune their downloads, et voila. Anyway, the student this time was a kid from my church friend circle, a few years younger than me. We'd grown up together, and were very active in the church community. He approached me noting that no apps would run, so I checked his storage usage and sure enough his user data was consuming all of his memory. So, routinely, I opened his downloads folder to prune it. The page filled with animal-born thumbnails, like full-on women and men having all forms of sex with dogs, horses, etc. The viewer displays a dozen thumbnails at a time, so I decide that I'm going to just casually delete them and move on to the real meat of the downloads, which had to be zip files. It was always zip files. The screen refreshes with more, and as I flip down through the folder I slowly realize that the meat is all bestiality born, probably a few thousand images and videos. Church boys leaning up against the wall watching all of this with a poker face, not saying a word, not moving a muscle. After a few more scrolls down, I turned to him and noted that I couldn't diagnose the problem and suggested that we just wipe the device, to which he agreed. Device fixed, move on with my day. I never told anything to anyone who knows him, but I disengaged from him socially afterwards. It's not that I had a real opinion on the content, but I couldn't push past that deer in the headlights awkward moment that we shared. My daughter's 3. Last month she asked me what happens when you die. This threw me off. I gave her a vague description of heaven and how Jesus and Mary are there. We are Catholic. Her middle name is Mary and she has a statue of her in her room. I also said mom and pop will probably be there too. I didn't want to tell her that I'm hopefully dead by then too. She then asked me what happens to your face when you die, which I thought was a great question that I didn't want to get into. How do you tell a child about decomposition? While I attempted to answer this question, she had a follow-up question. Her add-on to the was the worst. Like in a fire daddy, what happens to your face when you die in a fire? She doesn't watch anything besides Disney Junior, Meg Junior, Disney movies, and her YouTube channels, unboxing videos, family fun pack, etc. So essentially what I discovered was she has a super inquisitive mind, asking me questions she knows I'm not prepared to answer. With me as the kid, one unusual thing happened. My mom definitely found plenty of drugs, and, actually, my dad once found some penthouses I had stolen from a box in his room, and the problem there is that he actually worked for Penthouse when I was a baby and had written the letters, sorry, yeah, they're not real, that I was masturbating to. I'm female, so it was actually weirder, maybe, than if I was the target audience, but uniquely weird, because it was his work. But when I was maybe 13, my mom found chicken bones in my nightstand. I had been sneak eating and otherwise pretending to be a committed vegetarian, partly because I felt a lot of pressure from my mom to eat smaller portions and generally in more feminine ways. The day she found it was a few days before I left for summer camp. She had a brief talk with me about the dangers of keeping food waste in a bedroom, but then went and wrote a letter, which she sent that day, and it arrived at my summer camp on the day she dropped me off. It was a list of things she loved about my individuality, and how beautiful she thought I was, and the last thing on the list was that I'm fine the way I'm and no one needs me to eat in any particular way, so I'm free to eat whatever foods I want. I was embarrassed, but pretty quickly I recognized all of it for what it was, and I do know I have a really good mom. Good dad too, because the whole penthouse thing ended with very little stress. My parents are brown, super conservative and religious. We never talk about things like love, affection, romance, relationships, sex, let alone safe secretary. So At some point during my teenage I found it convenient to jerk off with a condom on. It was very effective cause your hands, the floor and your balls would stay clean and dry. It's perfect for a quickie. Anyway my dad found a condom in the trash, which I never understood how cause I made sure it was lost in crowd of junk, and why did he even go through garbage? He confronted me about it, and despite it being very simple conversation, it was hell. Dad, I found a condom in the trash, was it yours? Me, Dad, smirks. Me, had to make something up, it's for when I have a wet night, I use it to clean up because, fuck, I made it worse, I have to let it all out manually or it just sits there. Nice, kill yourself. Dad, wasn't buying it, you should be careful, it's not safe to do certain things, you might want to speak to a doctor. Playing with what you don't understand can lead to death. He never finished high school by the way. Jesus faking Christ, it was the single most awkward conversation ever. But yeah, I haven't died from masturbating yet. I appreciated his initiative to take the step and talk to me about it, because these topics taboo in my family. But still. Not a parent, but was a child, when I had gone to a friend's house for a sleepover, only recently discovered 10 days before I went. I got used to it, so once it was time to go to sleep I went to the bathroom and did what stupid kids with phones do. But this family is quite close and not very private. Being a big family they are quite open. Bad news for me, when my friend walked in, after knocking on the door and me saying busy like 3 times, I just told him I was peeing and watching YouTube, even though he said he saw the guy slamming the fuck out of a sheik. He didn't really have internet privileges, so convinced me to send him all my porn. I did, but the sheet took 2 months to hit the bloody fan. When he was caught googling porn on his mom and dad's phones, didn't clear his history, the inexperienced faker. So he told them that I had introduced him to the devil of porn and told them the whole story, and they told my mom and dad the whole story, jacking in bathroom too. Needless to say, I never looked at porn outside of my room again, and things were weird as hell. Weirder than when I racked up an $30 bill from accidentally subscribing to porn on my phone contact, and that was weird. We still have dinner at their house every week, not awkward at all, I promise. Kind of late, but this is from the kid's perspective. Once upon a time I didn't know about computer viruses, but a couple of friends had made fun of me for not ever jacking off. Not wanting to be the only boy not doing whatever this jack off thing was, I googled jerk off instructions, found some videos, followed them, discovered the magic that is your first orgasm, and wanted more. Clicked on any and every video of any website if it looked hot. Got a virus alert, then on alert to download this software that'd kill the virus. Download that and the whole computer starts freaking out. I sat there crying until my dad got home. Luckily it was him and not mom. He probably wasn't happy about the fact that the computer was stuck on touche male babysitter's fat lucky nerd. I came up with some BS excuse. He pretended to believe me and told me to be more careful, but looking back the 4 or so used napkins probably said otherwise. A friend of mine got caught multiple times. He printed porn on the family computer and the printer ran out of paper. He left, and when his mom needed to print, she loaded up more paper and the rest of his porn printed. There was a guy at school that sold pirated CDs. It quickly became apparent that one can buy porn from him as well. It was just a bunch of stuff downloaded from Kazaa and recorded in such a way that it can be played on a DVD player. He labeled the porn virus and do not use anyway. My friend brought one of those virus CDs and took it home, and after a few used he forgot to take it out of the DVD player. He said it just disappeared. He brought another one, and second time unlucky his parents went out for the evening and he decided it would be a good time for some self-loving, and since his parents was out it would be great if his pants wasn't in the way. He loved himself with the help of the virus CD and fell asleep. His parents came home and found him like that. I know he got caught because his dad asked my dad if I'm just as uncontrollable. Man, if my parents had Reddit they'd have stories. I don't remember all of them, but the ones that stick out are, when I was about 12 to 13, found out dad did a lot of random downloading of porn. I was watching said porn by then, whenever my parents left the house. I faked up one time when I really wanted to watch this one hentai called F-Force, I think, and pretended like I wanted to watch Brother Bear in my mum's room. Closed the door, put in F-Force instead. Mom caught me about halfway in. I kinda forgot her reaction. Parents used to find my browser history filled with porn sites/searches. This was around the same age before I A. discovered how to clear browsing history and B. remembered to do it regularly. Needless to say, the computer has always been in the living room with the screen, not at a private angle. Little bit older I discovered masturbating in the shower with the shower head. I'd find stuff on Literotica and Asta.org on my 3DS, put it in a plastic baggie so it wouldn't get wet. When I'm done I set the 3DS on the edge of the tub and actually shower and get out. One time I forgot to pick up the 3DS on my way out, and I think dad went in behind me to go to the bathroom and found my 3DS still on and on the story I was reading. I vaguely remember it being a gang bang story, potentially cheating wife. I didn't get my 3DS back for about 3 months after that. Little bit older, 17 to 18, I'm pretty sure I was caught masturbating in bed multiple times. Mom just never called me out on it. I'd normally lie down cross-legged, and the comforter didn't completely cover the position of my legs. And lying with your legs crossed isn't a normal sleeping position. Probably a guilty look on my face. My little bro and I use the same computer for porn. This is back in the early 2000s, when malware was on many porn sites. So long story short, I usually knew which porn sites to avoid. He did not. Big Sausage Pizza became the default homepage for Internet Explorer. We both didn't care enough to fix it and just used a different browser. Our mom only knew to press the big blue E whenever she wanted to use the internet. So I get a call while I'm going to class /u/sailor_moonlight, I need your help. I pressed the big bluey like I always do, and this website won't go away. Felt so bad. She thought she was the cause of big sausage pizza appearing on the computer. I did tell her it was a virus and that sometimes computers are prone to viruses like people. It caught a cold. That made her feel better. And she now uses a story for a quick laugh with her friends. Specifically talking about how fake these big dicks looked. This is a little off topic, but it is relevant. I used to work for a school district 2 years ago, and was required to attend ethics training at the beginning of the school year. I've always enjoyed ethics trainings because a person, usually the school district's lawyer, always has interesting stories to share about various ethical violations, like teachers quitting in the middle of a school day and taping their classroom keys to the front office door, etc. In this particular district, the previous school year a teacher made local news and had been fired for watching porn on his school-issued computer at home. Apparently the guy downloaded a few videos and didn't completely wipe his drive before returning the computer at the end of the year. To demonstrate how much school techs could see on your hard drive, the lawyer showed a screenshot of the files with the comment, "Some of the explicit file names have been blurred." Sure enough, there was a list of files with obvious names like anal faking, college sluts and such partially blurred out. The funny thing was, the lawyer was clearly not hip to other porn terms as he left group creepers and extreme squirters on the 6-foot screen for all to see in the district training room. I sat in the back of the room of about 40 other people training and saw 3 younger guys stifling laughs and frantically searching for their phones. Sadly, I did not get a picture of the sharply dressed lawyer pointing out femdom pegging to a group of tenured education professionals. Let me preface this by saying that this is through my point of view as a kid and not my parents. Anyways, as a young teen that grew up in a very technological house, thousands of dollars of electronics and phones and shit everywhere, I had a lot of access to the internet and other people. I think my first computer was at age like 8 or 9. Anyways, skip ahead to 15-year-old me. At this point in my life, not a lot is going right for me. The home situation is falling apart and everything, and at the time I was a pretty troubled kid. Troubled enough to think that charming and getting into an online relationship with a 22-year-old mother of 2 was a good idea, who, by the way, was plenty faked up in her own right to do the things she did with me. And for anyone wondering, yes, I do thoroughly regret this and know it was wrong and illegal. I talked to her through texts and other messaging apps at the time, but mainly through texts. I had an iPhone at the time, and if any of you know how iCloud works, you will know that if you don't disable some parts of it, your texts can and will be shared with other people on the same cloud network. Little did I know that this was happening, and for months and months, texts back and forth between me and this woman were all being shared with my mother's phone as well. These texts included all sorts of disgustingly kinky pictures of this woman, videos, sound clips, and many other texts which happened to include revealing many of my more taboo kinks and outing me as a bisexual. While this was all going on, I wasn't living at home anymore and had moved to a close relative's house for a bit while I waited for things to cool off at my house. The moment I walked in the house and saw my mom's face when she looked at me, I knew immediately something was wrong. That's when my father took me out in the garage and talked to me for a solid 2 or 3 hours about everything and how they had known for months and read everything. Obviously after that I had all privileges of the internet and communication with the outside world taken away for about a year. Not to mention my mom was so disgusted with some of the things she read that she couldn't even be in the same room as me for probably 3 months. Not the parent, but the child. Being caught jerking it a couple times. The first time I was probably 12 years old, using the family computer. The desk was directly in view of the front door, and my mom walked in. We made eye contact and I quickly pulled up my pants and ran into the bathroom. She never said anything about it. Fast forward to when I was about 14. I had just woken up with a woody, so I was taking care of business. I had woken up a little earlier than usual that day, and I knew my mom would be coming in to make sure I was awake at 7:30 before she left for work. I lost track of time, and she walked in right as I nutted. She just said, "Oh, you're up," and walked out. When I was 17, my mom went snooping in my room because my sister had left the back door open and my mom wanted to make sure nobody had broken in and stolen anything. For some reason, she went looking in my dresser drawers and found 2 bottles of hard liquor. Got the whole "you have a problem" talk for that. I think my sister had tipped her off about it for whatever reason. Flip side, I'm pretty sure I caught my dad jerking off once. I walked in my parents' room to ask him something, and I saw his hand under the blanket before he rolled over and kind of groaned at me. TLDR, got caught jacking off twice. Parents found 2 bottles of alcohol in my room and caught my dad jacking off once. This might be the only post in this thread that doesn't involve sex. When I was in high school, I was under immense pressure from my parents to be absolutely perfect. This included me taking almost all AP classes my junior and senior year. I forget which year this happened, but one morning before school on the day I was going to take an AP test, I basically got a "you better pass this thing with flying colors or you're dead" to us lecture. I'm freaking out all day, and by late morning I was visibly agitated. Got up in the middle of class and asked to go to the nurse, went to the guidance counselor instead, and spilled my guts about the lecture I'd received from my parents that morning. He sends me off to the school shrink, who tells me that I'm having a panic attack and gives me a whole bunch of copies from a book on breathing exercises and whatnot. When I got home that day, I folded them up super small and hid them in an old jewelry box under my bed, forgetting that my mother likes to occasionally pilfer stuff from my room. So one day she evidently drags this old box out from under the bed to look for a pair of earrings and finds the tiny folded up pieces of paper. A few days later, when I come home, I'm presented with a stack of papers taken from some quack psychology book. There is a call made to the guidance counselor, who tells them as politely as possible to back the fuck off and give me some space. They threatened to pull me out of school and thus began their 3-year quest to try and have me committed to a psych ward. Yay. Not a parent-child story, but my girlfriend has this story about her cousin, whom she is a couple years older than. I guess he was friends with a friend of hers in high school, and he apparently talked to my girlfriend's friend online about how he liked to stare at their other cousin's dick imprint through his skinny jeans and how it turned him on. They were apparently all seen at the time. I guess he was bi then too. I'm still curious why he thought my girlfriend's friend wouldn't tell her about it, though he's apparently not bi anymore. So whenever she mentions this particular cousin, she has a lot of cousins, I always make sure she specifies that it's her dick imprint cousin. She also apparently found his Tumblr recently, and he has a bunch of BDSM stuff with his girlfriend. Though I guess it's not really a case of prying, cause he doesn't really hide the BDSM Tumblr, I guess, since he followed her first. Apparently his Instagram is the same, which is weird, cause he has a Thea family following him. Edit, a few words. Back in 8th grade, my mother took my phone from me because of grades. Inevitably she went through it. One day I was coming home to find my whole family and my girlfriend's whole family in the living room. Silent. My money holding my phone and looking at me. She made me break up with her and made up some shit about her cheating on me with my best friend. Fast forward a few weeks, I'm at her house. Also get with me being an hormone-driven 8th grader, I was also too edgy for you. She found a bunch of Nazi memes on my phone. What did she do to combat this? She made me watch American History X 6 times in a row. There was some other stuff she made me do as punishment, like putting me to underage labor at a farm and occasionally working at a local pizza place. Keep the pizza place in mind. Right now would be a good time to chime in that my mother doesn't even have custody over me. Parents split when I was 5. Year later I finally got my phone back, and the first thing that I noticed was that she was still logged into Facebook. I went through it, and I don't regret going through it either. She was a huge faking hoe. So many different guys, all married. Even the owner of the pizza shop. That's not all. She stole the life savings of this poor old man she's been living with, and not just living with, but the one that pushed me over the edge. She forced my adult and married sister get an abortion. She had told us it was a miscarriage. I was disgusted that she was my mother. I lost every bit of respect I had for her. I sent her a long message telling her I know everything, and so does the family. I told her that we do not want her in our life and that she's just a burden on the family name. I still have screenshots from her Facebook and the text on the phone. I never saw her after that. She took her son, different father, and left town. We got a call from her son's father. He was crying. He had no idea what was going on, and he just wanted to see his son. Apparently she had been holding her son from seeing him for no reason. Word is she's with another longtime friend. I honestly don't care. She can rot in hell. TLDR, my mom took my phone from me, found porn and Nazi sheet. She made me do some underage labor at some points. Then I found out that she's a huge hoe and destroyed her life. And I regret none of it. Not a parent, but as a kid my parents discovered plenty of things in my room that they probably wish they hadn't. For starters, I have a diaper fetish. My parents found diapers in my room the first time when I was 11 or 12. I used to steal my cousin's pull-ups at my grandparents' house and hide them under my bed. I don't think my parents thought too much about it the first time they found them, because it was only 1 or 2 pull-ups. When I was 14, I managed to purchase a package of goodnights, bedwetting diapers for kids and teens, from the grocery store and I hid them in my closet. They found them. At that point I'm sure they knew it was something sexual. Luckily, my parents never mentioned it to me, because I'm sure it was just as awkward for them as it was for me. They also found gay porn on the computer a few times when I was a teen. And if they found gay porn, they also found diaper fetish stuff on the computer. I'm sure that is a hard pill to swallow, finding out your son is gay and likes to wear diapers. Hetero, well, as awkward as it was, I have never had any shame. I'm 17, so I'm obviously not a parent. When I was around 9 I got a DSi, which was pretty much a small DS but with internet. I mainly use the terrible browser and Flipnote Hasina. Around a few months after getting it I discovered porn. I didn't masturbate to it or anything. I just thought the characters looked funny. Not real porn, just cartoon/hentai porn. They made exaggerated faces and there was always milk everywhere. So I thought it was hilarious. I kept coming back and never cleared my history. One day when I was home alone I was looking for more porn, mainly Simpsons porn or Naruto girl, because I hated Sakura from Naruto for being so useless. My mom came home and asked me to get groceries out of the car while my sister went inside. I left my DSi open on the highest brightness setting. I don't think I've ever heard a kid snitch faster in my life. My mom questioned me and I thought I was in trouble and didn't really know what porn was or what it was meant for. So I just told her my DSi got a virus, which she obviously didn't believe, nor did she ever bring up again. I still watch cartoon/furry porn to this day, faking hilarious. I have a few stories here, mostly me prying. Discovered my dad's porn really young. He had sheetloads. I didn't have a computer, so it was awesome. We basically shared porn for a while, lol. Sounds kinda weird now, but I was a young horn dog and needed to beat the meat. When I finally did get a computer it was a cheap refurbished Dell, so was kinda slow. All the porn I watched didn't help. It crashed one day and my dad was trying to fix it. Internet Explorer popped up to a chick getting d***ed, I'm pretty sure. I said that's gross, who was watching that? It was my computer, lol. One late night I was in the living room downstairs and heard some loud talking upstairs. I started going up the stairs and discovered it wasn't talking, but porn blasting at 2 AM. My parents, twin sister, 9-year-old brother, and cousin shared this floor. My cousin was a year younger than me, so I thought it might have been him, then remembered both sisters and cousin were gone. It had to be my parents, I thought. Wrong. I walked closer to hear it from my brother cousin's room down the hall, so I walked closer thinking someone left the TV on and the Skinner Max started. Wrong again. I turned the corner and saw my 9-year-old brother's room wide open and him standing up, but as naked like 2 feet from the TV. He was fat as shit at the time and his gut was hanging out, and he was so mesmerized he didn't even hear me. He was fapping with his dick in a Gatorade bottle and I busted out laughing and asked him what he was doing. You know what I'm doing, with the most panicked look on his face. I was dying laughing and just walked away. I've been walked in on and just thought it was funny. He was 9, man, I still crack up when I think about it. Not a parent. I'd say around middle school, 4 to 5 years ago, I found out about incest and how it was morally considered morally wrong. Despite that, it kinda turned me on because it was a taboo. Now I was, and still am, repulsed by the idea of having sex with any of my family members, but reading about incest stories was different. Now at the time, I was starting to watch porn frequently, and even read erotica online. I came across a story that involved incest, and I was a bit hooked. The problem was, I needed to read this stuff in a private way. I didn't have a laptop or iPad, so my options were either a 3DS or a computer in our living room. Needless to say, I chose the 3DS. It was one day, while I was helping my sister, she's 3 years older than me, clean the house. I accidentally left my 3DS open with the browser on the counter when she asked me to get something. She saw my 3DS and got absolutely furious. She took my 3DS away from me and sent me to my room. She was not happy at all for the few days. Luckily she, to my knowledge, hasn't told anyone, and the subject has never been brought up since the incident occurred. Once in a while, I do worry that she misinterpreted the whole situation, or that she will hold this against me as blackmail, but nothing has happened so far, so whatever, she probably forgot about it. Not a parent, but I'd have to say my dad learned that I was not only more mature, but smarter than him as a kid. I was about 11 years old at the time and I played on an ElfQuest Holt, think fanfiction and fan art, based on our original group set on a fandom's world, and completely legitimized by the original creators, like they promoted Holts and stuff back then, because they loved the community back then, with my sister. So I had an adult elf and this guy contacted me and discussed pairing up my elf with his as life mates, which terminology wise is the equivalent of marriage. So he wanted to marry his character off to mine because he really liked my character. He liked the stories I wrote for her, just general love for the character. Shocking, I know, that I created a believable adult at 11 years old. Anyways, so my dad goes into my email account and finds this email chain of us discussing how and why the two would recognize, world term, think find your soulmate, and be compelled to make the babies with them. There was literally no talk of sex, except where I initiated the conversation of I'm not doing anything sex based. I'm not interested, and I'm 11 inches, and his shock that I was 11 and agreement that all our stories would be kept kid friendly. There was no explanation of terms, since we both knew the terminology of the world. So it essentially reads something like I'd really like to have Roscoe be life mate to Rama. Sure, no problem, she's not attached to anyone, so it could work. I'm 11, so no sex or anything. You're 11? Wow, you're pretty creative for a kid. Sure, no adult stuff. So how should they recognize a fight? One of them nearly dying. List of other such story ideas inserted here. And my dad comes down on me with both feet, like red-faced bloody freaking intense rage about my sibling with some dude who wanted me to be his sekhmet, his legitimate words. I remember to this day, because it was the stupidest moment in my dad's life, to know nothing of my hobby, and then instead of asking just go off the rails angry at me for his interpretation, or something. And after my multiple failed attempts to try to explain the world terminology to him, so he could understand I wasn't that stupid, he banned me from essentially ever writing with a group of people again. I was 18 before my dad realized that no, I had not stopped talking to people via the internet, that I had not completely isolated myself from my hobbies. I simply opened my own private email account and did everything through that way. He couldn't have access because I couldn't trust him to act like an adult. Since everyone else is being a bit loose with the question criteria, I will see if I can squeeze in a slightly off topic, but nevertheless horrifying story. A couple who are friends of a friend are swingers who have teenage children. They are decently well off and have a large home with two main parts, an adult part and a family part. One night the daughter for some reason goes around the outside of the house to a part where she can see into the adult part and sees none other than her mother being railed by some stud while her father watches. She was pretty distraught, as you might imagine, and drama ensues. Things were a bit awkward at breakfast the next day, though the daughter apparently glared at her parents and told them, I hope you are pleased with yourselves, which I thought showed some moxie.